All right, welcome everyone to today's broadcast of Eros and Thanatos Circles. I'm Chris, and I'm here with Heike. Heike's in Hamburg, Germany. I'm here in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, although I also call Boulder, Colorado home. We are glad that you're here to explore the joy and challenges of sexual love and sexual love relationships when on a path of personal growth and spiritual development. This is a new frontier in so many ways, very rich. So today's topic is going to be, when you're attracted to someone, is it sex or is it love? And this sort of takes us right to the beginning of our how the six of us met. And coming into that story of one mentioning six people is this began with myself becoming friends with a gentleman in Germany around the body of work. And we went, about a year ago, we went to a continuation of this work, a 4-day weekend, and the two of us met Heike. So the three of us met, Heike, myself, and this friend of mine. Very often, as is the case in spaces like this, people become very close. And also around a lot of consciousness work, a lot of times people can get a little touchy-feely. A lot of our defenses and inhibitions about expressing ourselves with touch or with words come down, and we realize how fluid close expression can be. So the three of us there spent quite a bit of time together, got close in a way of like hugging a lot and a lot of eye contact, kiss goodbye. And when this friend of mine and I got back to Berlin about 3 hours away, right away we were like, hey, let's just call Heike and see if she'll come down here. So she did. And in the process, she ran it by her husband of 20 years. And also this gentleman and I looked up her husband on Facebook to kind of sense into him and tune into his presence and recognizing that inclusion and transparency really matters. And that evening, the three of us, in varying degrees of closeness, did share some intimacy. And I can speak for myself. I was in a place of possibly decoupling from my existing partner, Elena, who is also on this call. And I clearly put forth that I didn't want to have intercourse. But I was very open to kind of lying around and some skin to skin and getting to know each other in that regard. And then I had to leave like at 2 or 3 in the morning to come back to the US. So thereafter, right away, I got in touch with Heike's husband. So the three of us were sharing within a week. Again, my drive to want to include all people and share all experiences, which is, I sense, is going to be a big core aspect of this call today, the inclusion. And then very short amounts of time, my significant other, Elena, as we got back together again, I shared this experience with her. And then in March, she came into this group as we had already formed. Myself, Heike, her husband, this gentleman that I am friends with, his partner. There were the 5 of us that were relating on a regular basis in this kind of format, Zoom right here. We were also on a WhatsApp channel sharing a lot of information. In March, Elena came in as well. So there's 6 of us. And this contact of being on Zoom continually and also really sharing a lot in written form about our experiences had a profound impact on us in the last year. So Anything else you want to share about this, Heike, and before we go into a little bit more on the topic?
Yeah, I would like to just give it a little bit of a bigger frame. I mean,
Sure.
that encounter was amazing and transformative. And then to see what grew out of it, that this became like a circle of 6 people that has grown together a lot throughout this year. And we all went through so much transformation. And this is, I mean, part of this is possible because nowadays in this postmodern age, it's not that we are set with how we have to live our relationships. We have a huge freedom, really, for the first time in a way, where we can consciously choose how we do want to shape our relationships. I mean, if there's consent, if that's okay with the other people involved and there's transparency, we can have sex without being in relationship. We can be in relationship, and there probably are many, many marriages where the people are in relationship, or at least they are married, and they might not be having any sexual contact. Or, I mean, there are just many different ways we can relate to, or we can experience intense intimacy with a friend and then decide if that's leading to sexual contact or not. So many, many different ways we could choose to live our relationship, which in former times really wasn't that possible. And I mean, of course, we still have the cultural and the society with all the expectations and judgments, but really, there's more freedom than ever. And this could just be a big playing field that's very irresponsibly used for your own pleasure only, or it could be an amazing, rich place where we can all learn so much from each other. And by being inclusive and by sticking to transparency, create a trust, like both with our intimate partner and with other people we relate to in whatever way we choose to. And that does take a high level of really deep care to not transform that into a total ego number. So great caring, great aware and awakeness, and all kinds of stuff will come up along the way. But we do have this possibility, and with that, it can also, like this, the bigger topic of what we are doing here is, like I mentioned, ego. And as we explore what relationship is and how we do relate, there's also a way how we can open up to relating more from essence, from the truth of the moment, from who we are in a much broader and deeper sense, when it's not just about me, and what's in there for me. And that's what all 6 of us were interested in, and what's really key for our exploration here too. That's what we want to find out.
Yeah, great, Heike. And, you know, one of the things that I sense we both noticed here when we're sharing this with others, the words in so many ways fall short of the actual experience. Yeah. To bring a little bit more to the nature of this, the body of work we were all in, transparent communication, Thomas Hübel's work. So now it's interesting, I think a lot of us can relate to this, where there's the passion we have for a practice, we'll start doing some of it, and then there's a gap to like actually applying it. You know, a lot of times around pair bonding and relational stuff, especially when sexuality is involved, we all on the path, so to speak, I sense are challenged at that point of like, am I going to be fully transparent? I know I should be, not out of morals or ethics, but this sense of like, that's walking talk. Mm-hmm. And in this regard, we did it. Like we did not hold back at all. Our attractions for each other within this group, our challenges, our sense of ownership and jealousy and possessiveness. And what's fascinating about what went down is that for whatever reason, and we don't have an answer to this, I mean, there's general suppositions, but people for all time have been hiding their attachments to other people while they're in a relationship. This is constant. It's constantly happening. Whatever it is, half of all marriages end in big disruption. Half of the remaining ones are very unhappy. And even there, you know, when men get together, it's like, oh, I'm not going to tell my partner this, or wives get together, you know, he'll never know that. He'd leave me. We just like went right into all that. And the thing, yeah.
And the amazing thing is, like, whenever we dare to act, like whenever I'm sensing something in me and I'm then honestly communicating it with my husband, that there is attraction or that I want to do this or that exactly is the piece that actually reestablishes trust and intimacy. Because whenever I withhold, and this is a general spiritual concept, like when we withhold, then we create distance. Like there's a hiding, and that just takes us away from the other person. So it's not what we do, but it's more the disconnect that's created by moving away in withholding. And it's fascinating because there's always the fear. There's always, oh my God, if I say this, like I don't even dare to admit that to myself. And now if I bring it up and then I say it, and in that moment, there is like a release, an opening, like something shifts in the field. And it's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. Fascination is an understatement. My hobby, passion, interest, and I've made it my livelihood is the exploration of like our true nature. It started out like with some mystical considerations, out of body experiences, deep trance states, and that sort of thing years and years ago. Yeah, and by the way, both Heike and I have been dabbling in this field and then getting pretty committed to it for, 18 years for you, right? Yeah, 20 years here. And that doesn't, if anything, it doesn't make me an expert. It makes me know like what not to do and all the different paths of self-deception. But in this, landing in this space, the fascinating part, there's some sort of dynamic where we have our worldly self and then this spiritual or conscious part of us, or timeless, immortal, indestructible that we all know about. And it's there. And what I've noticed is when we go right into something that we fear, the other part of us that shows up is this larger, if you want to call it more conscious dynamic, if you want to call it your soul, your being, your awareness, but it just has its game on. Now, a lot of times when we're doing that, we might feel really shaky or nervous. And I'm here to tell you from the research on this, that fear that approaches telling the truth, that's our ego structure, knowing that the game's up, knowing that it's like, it's over. And its hold on things is going to fall apart. And the fascinating part is that when you go into that fear, which is ego-driven, all fear is ego-driven, another part of us comes online, and it's not all mystical and airy-fairy. It is like really capable, present, awake, unafraid, amazing, the different things that it can work with. And so over the year that we were together, and it's an interesting dynamic because there's 3 pairs of men and women. So not just like 2 couples, between the 6 of us, 6 sets of eyes, always on these things that are just about going to be held back because of fear or shame or concern about hurting someone else, just letting it all out and not dumping, but sharing from a place of that there's a field of consciousness, there's an ecology. And all of these things we're speaking to, less fear, more trust, this ecology, a field of consciousness, This is the playing field of the essence or the being or the soul. And it is fascinating. And when we really get in there, we suddenly realize, whoa, I know exactly what to do. This isn't like some high and mighty thing. This is exactly how, like, we were born this way. Like, it's like having a flying car in the driveway, and you're, you know, and you're driving your whole life to the supermarket when you can just press a button and go boop. So,
and I love the example that you said the other day when you used the metaphor of learning how to ride a bike.
yes.
Before you know it, you can't have the experience before you actually have that experience. You fall down, you don't know how to work it, and then once you ride your bike, once you get in touch with a more essential way of relating, it's like, wow, this is completely different. Now I'm riding the bike.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to, like, we just don't have the experience before we have it.
Yes, and this is one of the little tricky points of real significant transformation. We can get the information, even have the realization of the truth of it, but until we get it like a taste of it, and some people call this one taste, that's otherwise known as the first language. But boy, once you get a glimpse of it, you know it firsthand. But until then, sometimes it doesn't seem possible, or like there's a barrier, can't get past it. And it is so similar to riding a bicycle. You can't read how to ride a bicycle. You can go touch a bicycle, read all about it, watch other people, and the first time you get on, you're probably going to crash or be wobbly. But then something just comes in. That's the transformation. That's the quantum pop. And that's what we're here to share. That's what, over the past year, I at least experienced 3 of those. And I watched the 6 of us go through so many pops like that. And the nature of the pop is, before the pop, you don't think you can do it. And then you do it, and it's like, whoa.
And you don't know what it will look like. So there's
right.
this part of not knowing, of opening
Yes.
up to the unknown. Yeah.
Yes, the not knowing is another big entry point. You know, the inclusion, the daringness and the courage to speak to exactly what's going on. And then as you go into that space, there is no guarantees what's going to happen. But invariably, the individual or the being, because that's probably the being that's showing up, is capable. And yeah, very, very significant. So I can, where are we on time here as far as again, our format is that we do this for about 30 or 40 minutes and then we open to Q&A. So I could share from my own experience with you, Heike, and Elena, who's here. Are you open to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. About today's topic, yeah?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And also I checked with Elena on this prior to this broadcast. So to speak with, you know, the whole piece about, is it sex or is it love?
And you're using her name this time. You got permission for that too?
I think I did.
Elena, you got to write in the chat if this is okay.
Yeah, let's see.
The consent piece.
Consent. Yeah, consent is a really big part of anything. I'm not blushing, so I think I'm safe.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be like you trusting your body wisdom. But yeah, you know, remember we were discussing this, really, the 4 of us, before this started. Okay. That upon meeting Elena, there was a lot of attraction, and that, so there was a lot of like sexual polarity, magnetism, pull, and also we shared in an online dating site as far as our commitment to various spiritual considerations and orientations to larger teachings, soul beingness compared to ego. So there's an interest there. There's a sense of, oh, I feel an affinity, a connection. a love. And then also across our genders, there was definitely attraction. So in my experience, and you'd have to check with her, but it was like 50-50, being really attracted and then this interest. And then even this morning, we were all joking around, on the topic, is it sex or is it love? And then Elena said something to the effect of like, well, one day it's sex, one day it's love, one day it's love, one day it's sex. But there's no doubt that the attention that men and women can have on each other is many teachers refer to pure attention as love, like when you are loving a baby. And so with our sexuality is that there is this focus of this attention, and in that attention, affection and love can show up. This is a very vast topic of like, and then it gets into what is love. I have a sense it's much easier to identify our sexual desires rather than what love is. So, and then with you and I, Heike, meeting you, we've, and this was all shared among the 6 of us. Oh, Elena is saying, I'm good. Okay. All right. Okay.
Just sitting in the
all right, good. Now I'm blushing for whatever reason. This is one of the things that you pay more attention to when you're like trying to wake up. What's your body doing? What your mouth might be saying is one thing, but with you and I, Heike, you were translating. That's how we met, and you're there with your head parked right here, and I recognized right away that our perceptual and thinking processes are very, very parallel. And we were also discussing some of our disappointments with the teachings relative to broader teachings we've experienced. So there's this perceptual line that you and I share, which allows for, again, attention to just flow. And I began to feel love for you. And noticing that there's we're the opposite gender, then that shows up. So now at this point in this experience, this is about really noticing a similarity in worldviews and perception, and then desiring contact as a way to express that or get to know somebody better. So that was, lot of similarities in worldview, noticing our attraction, and then this tension is still there. So sharing this openly here in this space with the 6 of us is one example, which at first created an enormous disturbance with Elena and I, but then over time, and here's another thing, I swear this is like not egoic or world self, this is our infinite self. Trust shifts from structure to the context that you're holding all the time with each other, that at all times, whatever's going on is going to be shared in a pretty timely fashion. So agreements don't matter as much, compromises don't matter as much. The trust starts to shift from all those structures to a living contact. That's a game changer. That all of a sudden you feel real safe in any kind of a relationship space. So that's my personal experience there with 2 women, that you in Hamburg and Elena right here on the other side of this wall. And that's, I'm hoping, can give people that are seeing this a sense of the freedom involved. And, especially the shame we feel when we're attracted to somebody in a primary relationship. Man, that is like, that is like such a large thing to be able to transcend. Yeah. Anything you want to share? You have like 5 more minutes.
I get a sharing limit. Okay. Well, when I was contemplating the topic, the first thing popped up was, sometimes these days I don't even know what love is anymore, or the definition or the use of how we use this word. Sometimes doesn't feel it totally applies. Like I even there, I already got stuck, because in my experience, and like when I relate to somebody, like, and I can use you as an example, Chris. Like one thing that shows up for me with you, and I have this experience with one other friend, is that, and probably because of this similarity in perception, that in a way it's super easy to fall into a very relaxed space where something just opens, and then there is love. It's just there, and it's almost like it doesn't even need anything. So then there's like many things could happen, but when I drop into this space, it's almost like abundance within myself opens up. And then I could be like, the space could open and I could be walking through the forest all by myself, and I could be loving the trees, or I could, then it's like this whole thing of I love you. And then it gets really strange when we, like in this place where love, and when I'm feeling love and it feels really expansive and open, it doesn't want to be limited in that way. And I'm starting to question, am I just directing it to somebody? Is that a projection of, like, is that language? And then of course there is a very specific individual piece that's completely unique, like my relationship that I have to you, Chris. It's totally unique. And yet the love that I feel when I open up seems so much bigger. And when I'm in touch with this abundance in myself, then this whole thing, this whole cultural expectation of, okay, I love you and you love me, and that's anybody we ever gonna love, and this is it. It just doesn't seem to apply. It seems like they're Niagara Falls and we give them a little tube to run through and say, okay, this is where you gotta flow through. And it's just like, why in the world would anybody want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one big point where it already starts for me.
And this is where, when we speak to, you know, that part of the languaging we're using to be in an open conversation and exploration about this, is that sexual love, as in all the relationships that involve that, as a vehicle for awakening. So let's say, whether it's, you know, questioning, is it sex or is it love, or what is love, to actually bring our attention to these questions, to these inquiries, rather than, instead of a place of confusion, that it is our being or our essence that can, with great enthusiasm, inhabit these questions and be very alive with them. And we begin, this is actually waking up. This is waking up out of the trance of what of our family structures and all of our culture and society tells us, that when we have sexual impulses and attraction to another person, that it's going to look this way. We are going to meet someone, we're going to have desire, then we're going to have attraction, then we're going to have attachment, then we're going to have commitment. And then all along you go there, the more and more you sort of become limited. You become, this is going to be our topic next week, what happens when you get into a relationship and how your behavior changes. Who do you become and why? And to bring our attention to that is an awakening in itself. Massive awakening. And here, then we start to discover, I mean, I'll just quote a teacher totally, and this is also by a very dedicated Buddhist psychologist, John Wellwood, that we are, when we wake up, we recognize that we're not getting love from somebody. That's our scarcity, fearful self. When we feel that, like when I feel that with you, Heike, it's that you're reflecting me and I get to feel myself. And the same thing with Elena. I can remember once washing some dishes with her and I said, there's this cool thing that when I feel really good with you, it's actually, I'm getting not narcissism, but I'm getting to feel myself as it's bouncing off of you. Mm-hmm. Now this is like, whoa, this is like the red pill in the Matrix. And but your being knows about this. Your ego knows nothing of this. So this is another like awakening. And in that space, it's a little unstable at first, but once you get used to it, it's really safe. It's really relaxing. So anything else you want to say to that before we, go to Q&A and drop the recording off here?
Yeah, I would like to briefly speak about how it is for me with my husband, Sven. Because it shows up very differently there. And at the same time, there's also deep love. We have been married for 22 years. And actually, we'll bring Sven into this conversation pretty soon, possibly next week. So we can share more about that. And with him and me, we don't necessarily have this direct match of perception. So many times he says something and I'm like, huh? And the other way around. And at the same time, there is like something that has grown over the years, which is just a deep, reliable, and very flexible and adaptable kind of trust. And it's a really different taste. It's totally different, but it's very precious and beautiful too. And as I'm opening up to, like, through getting in touch with my essence, all of a sudden generosity shows up to be much more present with the differences that I used to rub against, and I would get frustrated and judgmental. And with myself being more connected, all of a sudden there's more space to see him as and for he is, even in the places where it's not how I maybe would have wanted him. And when that happens and really shows up, then sometimes I have a feeling this is also a place where a different kind of love only starts. Like when I'm letting go of my ideas and actually really begin seeing the other person for who he or she is. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring Sven in here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, well, even, again,
And he's coming in. Now he's knocking. Come on in for a moment. Okay, Sven's popping his face in here.
There he is.
There I am.
So, good to see you. Yeah, the inclusion piece is so giant, where even in the first week, again, going back to how I wanted to meet Sven right away, that this is, for whatever reason, we hide our attractions to other people when we're in a primary relationship until we don't. And this inclusion piece is so empowering that there's a paradox here that I noticed here with Elena, as I included her in my attraction to you, and this is where it starts to get really cosmic. My capacity to perceive her more broadly expanded. I was not limited to like the couple bubble of like, oh, it's like, you're not seeing me the way I want you to see me. So therefore, oh, that means you don't love me. And it's like, wah, wah, wah. It gets really, some enlightenment teachers actually say, until you come from a perspective of presence, most relationships are dysfunctional. And when you speak about how much your perception with Sven opened up, my perception with Elena, and I consider I work at this. I work at awareness. I was stunned at how much I actually saw her. My eyes opened. And that is a kind of love in terms of a willingness to perceive someone more fully than just through your own filters. So yeah, all these different dimensions of more awake love, very powerful.
It's a work in progress, right? In process, work in process here.
For sure.
Right. And well, great. So, and also, now this is a great time to close. Now, next week, I understand, Sven, is that you're possibly going to be stepping in to co-host, because I live in a house in Boulder, co-housing, and we're going to have a big election celebration and post-Thanksgiving Day party. I don't know if I'll really be up for this kind of thing. So Sven and Heike are going to run this, and if I do show up, then maybe I could like interview you guys a little bit. So always unlimited surprises here in this Eros and Thanatos field of you know, as we keep ourselves open to pure awareness, there's surprises all the time.
Sven, do you have any finishing word of wisdom for us here before we press us on?
That is a big task to now deliver finishing words of wisdom.
Okay.
Well, from my side, from my perspective, the peace and inclusion that you just mentioned, Chris, I think was key for me to be able to step right into sharing how I felt, because there was this spoken and felt invitation to do so. And in a place that, for me at least, bore quite some vulnerability, where I think it would have been easy for my psyche to step out and retract to a position of keeping my pain to myself and identifying with it. The larger field that you opened up really allowed me to step forward and say, well, here I am, and I'm supporting all this. And while I'm supporting all this, I can also be here with where I feel insecure, or where I can feel pain coming up. I think that is such a cornerstone of how we relate to each other.
Yeah, super, super big. I sense too what you're speaking to there. Again, words always fall a little bit short, but that choice point where it's like we could either, when we're in disturbance and we're either in resistance or fear or even anger, that am I going to just withdraw into my own perspectives, or my own behavior of keeping something secret, or my anger or my disappointment, instead of just saying it. And then once it's said and named, and especially in this group, the three couples and the six of us, poof, boom, you're there. I saw this over and over and over again with the six of us. We would show up. Yep.
And I think especially in this field, where we may take some pride, and may also be sort of fall a little bit into that trap. Oh, I'm so spiritually advanced.
Sure.
I shouldn't feel whatever I feel, and therefore I'm hiding, and then I'm creating a gap between me and myself, and between you and me, and between Heike and me. And so the invitation of all is allowed, all is welcome, is really that key into being able to just like, oh, this is how I feel. This is what's going on.
Yeah. And there's, of course, on the path, we're always going to be challenged periodically with, like, as we develop new capacities, that part of our worldly identity will come in and say, oh, I'm so cool. But there is this thing I was pondering last night in a dream, in a kind of wake state. What we've experienced here is this, in the world of waking up and spirituality, one of the teachings says that, your sadness and your despair and your happiness are all the same thing. They're just connected in time. And fundamentally, then you are the one that just witnesses all that. You're experiencing all that. And and I got to experience myself in this last year, because so much came up that in my difficulties or my joy or my amazement or my terror, we were going through so much. I was like, wow, I'm the one that's here, like watching all this, right? Like,
Yeah.
right. And then it's like, oh, that's who I actually am. I'm not this happy guy. I'm not this freaked out, terrorized guy. And you named it, Sven, in terms of you're like, this is a space where everything's welcome. And then all of a sudden, little by little, like our identities all sort of like shifted a little bit to this more broader space as an individual that can do all that. And I love that. I sense that is what we're all in some ways seeking on the path, is that shift in identity.
And I immediately want to jump into how this is all connected to quantum physics, but maybe that's something for the next session.
Oh, great. Talk to me about quantum physics.
Science and spirituality are converging. So, yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, Sven, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to next Sunday, no matter how it shows up. Yeah. I hope to be there. If I'm not, I'll see you guys next time. Sven will definitely carry the day. And all right, so we're going to end the recording now, and then into Q&A.